She said my name like it was something fragile, something she wasn't supposed to touch, but couldn't stop reaching for. That was the first time I realized how close we were standing. The kitchen was too quiet. The hum of the fridge filled the silence, and the smell of rain drifted in through the open window. She stood by the counter, sleeves pushed up, hair loose, a glass of white wine turning slow circles in her hand. Her aunt, my landlord, had gone upstairs a few minutes ago, leaving me alone with the woman who'd just arrived to help with the packing. Her name was Elise, mid-40s, graceful in a way that didn't try to be. There was something steady about her, a stillness that made you pay attention. I wasn't supposed to notice her the way I did. "Your aunt tells me you're good with your hands," she said, her tone light but not careless. I half smiled, trying to keep it normal. "She means fixing things, I think." Elise's lips curved, faint amusement flickering across her face. I know what she meant. She looked back at the boxes stacked by the wall, then at me. A pause hung between us, the kind that pulls at both people without asking permission. Her fingers brushed against mine when she handed me a marker. It wasn't an accident, but she didn't acknowledge it either. "You label," she said quietly. "I'll tape." Her voice wasn't flirty. It was careful, like someone testing the edge of something they weren't sure was safe. We worked side by side, barely speaking. Every time she leaned closer, I caught the faintest scent of something. Sandalwood, maybe mixed with rain and wine. My pulse started to sync with the sound of the tape stretching and snapping. I told myself not to stare. When I did risk a glance, she was already looking at me. "Do I make you nervous?" she asked, a hint of curiosity in her tone. Not teasing, just honest. I hesitated, caught off guard. "A little." She smiled, small, almost to herself. "Good. I'd hate to think I've lost that effect completely." There was something beneath the words, a trace of regret or maybe just time. The way she said lost made me want to say something, anything, that might make her feel seen again. But I didn't. I just nodded, pretending to check the box label. Elise moved closer, her shoulder brushing mine as she reached for another roll of tape. Her hand lingered on the counter beside mine, fingers tapping once. A rhythm she didn't seem aware of. She looked up, and in that small moment, I felt the air shift, the kind of charged stillness that comes before a confession or a storm. "You know," she murmured, "my sister, your aunt, used to say I always found trouble in the quiet ones." I laughed softly. Guess she was right. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing just slightly. "Maybe." Then, almost under her breath, she added, "You remind me how it feels to be wanted." The words hit the air and just stayed there, suspended, real, irreversible. Neither of us moved. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere distant, and a door upstairs creaked open. Her hand dropped from the counter. "Your aunt's coming down," she whispered, stepping back like she'd been caught in a light too bright. I nodded, heart still racing. The taste of her words stuck somewhere between my ribs. By the time the footsteps reached the stairs, Elise had turned away, pretending to study the half-sealed box, her face calm, her breathing not. And that was the moment I knew. Something had started that neither of us could name yet, and both of us already felt too late to stop. The next day, she pretended not to remember what she'd said. Elise arrived early, hair tied back, jeans and a pale shirt rolled at the sleeves. She looked like someone trying to keep things practical, like there hadn't been a sentence the night before that still echoed between us. I played along. We boxed books in silence until she spoke, voice too casual. "You're quiet today." I hesitated, trying to sound light, thinking about how many books your sister owns. Elise smiled faintly, not looking up. "She reads to fill spaces. We all have our ways." The tape tore through the quiet again. Then she said softer, "I used to fill mine with people." Something in her tone made me stop. She wasn't looking at me, but I could see it, the distance in her eyes, the faint tightness at the corners. "You don't anymore?" I asked. She shook her head. "People leave. Habits stay." I didn't know what to say to that. There was a small silence, warm but weighted. Her hand brushed against my arm as she reached for another box. The touch was brief, but her fingers lingered just a second longer than they should have. A fraction of a pause that said everything her words didn't. "I didn't mean to make things uncomfortable yesterday," she murmured suddenly. "You didn't. You're kind," she said, meeting my eyes. "That's dangerous." I tried to laugh, but it came out uneven. "I think that's supposed to be a compliment. It's a warning." Her voice had dropped lower, quieter. We stood close enough that I could feel the warmth of her breath when she exhaled. Faint coffee, something floral. My body reacted before my mind did. My hands tightened around the box just to keep still. She noticed. Of course she noticed. "Elise," I said, because her name was the only thing that felt steady enough to hold. She looked up, eyes searching my face like she wanted to memorize something and hate herself for it later. Then her phone buzzed on the counter. She stepped back, the spell breaking. It was a short call. A man's voice, low and familiar. She kept her answers short, polite, distant. When she hung up, she didn't explain who it was. She didn't have to. Her eyes were a little dimmer now, softer around the edges. "Old habits," she said, almost to herself. I nodded. "Someone from before?" She smiled, not a happy one. "Someone who liked the idea of me more than the mess." That stuck with me. She turned back to the boxes, her movements slower now, quieter. I reached for the same roll of tape at the same time she did. Our fingers brushed again. This time neither of us pulled away. The touch wasn't electric. It was heavier than that. Steady, deliberate, like something that couldn't be undone. Her thumb traced a slow, unthinking circle over the back of my hand before she caught herself. Then she exhaled, shaky, barely there. "We should finish this," she said. But her voice wasn't steady anymore. I didn't answer. For a moment we just stood there, surrounded by half-sealed boxes, the smell of dust and rain, our hands still touching. Nothing else in the room moved. And in that quiet, I knew she wasn't the only one with spaces to fill. Rain came down harder that night. It drummed on the roof, soft but relentless, the kind of sound that made silence louder. I hadn't planned to see her again that evening, but Elise knocked on my door just after 9. She stood in the hallway, damp hair clinging to her temples, holding a stack of folders. "Your aunt asked me to drop these off," she said, her voice too even. I stepped aside to let her in. She hesitated before crossing the threshold. Just a flicker, then brushed past me, the faint scent of her perfume breaking the air open. She set the folders on the small kitchen table, but neither of us moved away. "You could have left them by the door," I said quietly. "I know." Her tone was flat, but her hands were trembling, small, restless movements as she pretended to straighten the pile. The power flickered. A flash of thunder rolled through the house, close enough to shake the window. She looked up at me then, really looked. "You shouldn't let me keep coming here." "Then why do you?" Her breath caught. "Because you listen. And I can't remember the last time anyone did." She tried to laugh it off, but it didn't sound like her. I moved a step closer, not sure if I meant to comfort her or make it worse. "Elise, don't," she said softly, but she didn't move back. Her hand brushed my chest when she tried to pass, and the contact stopped both of us. The space between us tightened, small, magnetic, dangerous. She looked up, eyes flicking to my mouth before she caught herself. "This is wrong," she whispered. "I know." Her fingers were still on my shirt. I could feel the heat through the thin fabric, the quick rhythm of her pulse. For a second, I thought she'd close the gap, thought she'd let it happen. Then a sound broke the air. A phone buzzing, sharp, insistent. Her phone. She froze, turned toward it, and I caught a glimpse of the caller ID before she flipped it face down. The name was a man's. Her expression changed, not guilt exactly, but something close. A reminder of the world outside that moment. She stepped back, ran a hand through her hair. "I shouldn't have come. I told myself I wouldn't. I didn't stop her. Couldn't. But my voice came out lower than I meant. You don't have to leave." She looked at me, torn between wanting to go and wanting to stay. "I'm too old to be this stupid," she murmured, more to herself than to me. The lights flickered again. Another rumble of thunder. And then, without thinking, she reached out, pressed her palm against my face. Just that. A single, steady touch. Her hand was warm, shaking slightly. Neither of us moved. She breathed out, voice barely above a whisper. "If I stay, I won't be able to pretend anymore." Her thumb brushed my jaw once, slow, lingering, and then she turned, reaching for the door. But before she opened it, she stopped. "Lock it after me," she said, not looking back. "And don't make this harder than it already is." When the door closed, the room felt smaller, the air thicker, her warmth still clinging to it. And I realized, resisting her wasn't distance anymore. It was its own kind of closeness. The next time I saw her, she didn't knock. I was halfway through fixing a cabinet hinge in the kitchen when the door swung open and Elise stepped in. Fast, tense, eyes bright with something she didn't want to name. "You've been avoiding me," she said. I straightened slowly. "You told me to." "That's not the point." She stood there, dripping from the rain again, hair loose this time, her blouse clinging to her shoulders. The scent of wet fabric and her perfume filled the space between us. I wiped my hands on a towel, trying not to look at her the way I always did. Too long, too openly. "Elise," I started, but she cut me off. "Don't say my name like that." "Like what?" "Like you mean it." The silence that followed was tight, almost painful. She took a step closer. "Do you know what it's like?" she said, voice low. "To wake up every morning and wonder who you'd be if you'd made one different choice?" I swallowed. "Yeah," I said. "I do." Her breath hitched, a quiet sound that hit me harder than it should have. "I can't keep pretending I don't notice you," I said. The words slipped out before I could stop them. She looked at me, really looked, as if searching for a lie and not finding one. Then she laughed once, softly, but there was no humor in it. "You're young. You think wanting is simple. It doesn't feel simple." That broke something in her. She reached out, caught my wrist, and held it. Not tight, but like she was testing how real I was. Her hand was cold from the rain. I didn't move. Her thumb brushed over my pulse. Once. "This isn't fair," she whispered. "I don't care." She exhaled, shaky, stepped closer until her body almost touched mine. The distance between us was a breath, maybe less. "I keep thinking," she murmured, eyes flicking to my lips. "If I let this happen, everything I've built to protect myself will just come apart." My voice came out rough. "Then let it." She closed her eyes, and for a moment, neither of us breathed. I reached up, fingers trembling, brushed a strand of wet hair from her face. She didn't pull away. The touch seemed to undo her. She leaned forward, forehead against mine, skin warm despite the rain. I could feel the small tremor in her breath, the faint tremble of her hands resting against my chest. "Elise?" She lifted her head, eyes glassy, mouth parted, and said quietly, "If you touch me now, there won't be a way back." The air between us felt electric, heavy, impossible to stand still in. And then, a voice from the hallway. Her aunt's. "Elise? Are you down here?" Elise froze. Her hands slipped from my chest, her face turning away. But her voice, low, breathless, barely held steady as she whispered, "Don't move." The footsteps drew closer. Her eyes met mine one last time, full of everything we couldn't say. Then, in a whisper that felt like both a warning and a promise, she said, "Later." The next morning, the house felt wrong. Too quiet, too aware. I tried to keep my distance. Fixed a window latch, made coffee, tried not to replay the sound of her voice saying later. But then the front door opened. Elise stepped inside, her face pale, eyes sharp with something brittle. She didn't look like someone who'd slept. "Your aunt knows," she said. My chest tightened. "Knows what?" "That something's going on." I blinked. "Because of last night?" "She heard me," Elise said quietly. She came down far enough to see us, close. Her voice trembled on that word. "She asked me this morning if I'd lost my mind." I stared at her, heart thudding. "What did you say?" I lied. She let out a shaky laugh, the kind that hides panic. I told her we were just talking, that you've been helping with the move, that I'm just lonely. The word hung between us like a confession neither of us wanted to own. Her fingers twitched at her side, restless. I wanted to reach for her, but the air between us felt fragile, cracked. Elise, she cut me off, voice rising. She said I should stop coming here, that it looks wrong, that you don't understand what this could do. She turned away, pacing. And maybe she's right. Maybe I don't understand either. I stepped closer, unable to stop myself. Do you want to stop? Her shoulders tensed. Don't ask me that. Why not? Because I don't have an answer that makes sense. She turned then, eyes bright, almost angry. But beneath it, something else, something raw. I keep trying to make this stay small, she said. But every time I leave, it gets worse. I can't stop thinking about you. The words landed like a blow. I didn't move, couldn't. Her breathing hitched, her throat working as she tried to swallow it back. This isn't who I am. I took a step forward. Maybe it is. Maybe you've just forgotten. Her lips parted, but no sound came. She pressed a hand to her chest like she could hold herself together. You don't understand what people will say. I've already lived through being someone's mistake once. I reached out, slowly, carefully, and touched her hand. She didn't pull away, but her fingers trembled beneath mine. You're not a mistake, I said. Her eyes closed, and a tear slipped free before she could stop it. For a long second, there was no sound but her breathing and the soft hum of the refrigerator. Then she opened her eyes, stepped closer until her body was almost against mine. This can't keep happening, she whispered, voice breaking. But it already is. Her gaze dropped to my mouth again, and I felt her hand rise, hesitant, trembling, until her fingertips grazed my jaw. She looked up, eyes dark and certain. Then maybe I should stop pretending it hasn't. And before I could speak, she turned and walked toward the door. Not fast, but with the kind of finality that felt like a dare. At the doorway, she stopped, glanced back once. Tonight, she said. If I come back, I won't leave again. Then the door shut, and I was left with the sound of my heartbeat and the weight of what she'd just promised. That night, the rain stopped, the first quiet evening in days. The house felt hollow without her. I sat at the kitchen table, one light on, staring at the door like waiting could change the outcome. I told myself she wouldn't come, that she'd listen to reason or to her sister, or to the part of herself that still wanted to be good. Then headlights flashed across the window. A knock, soft, hesitant. When I opened the door, Elise stood there in a dark coat, eyes searching mine. She looked nervous, beautiful, unsure. I shouldn't be here, she said. You said you might come back. She gave a small, broken laugh. I said if I did, I wouldn't leave. Her voice trembled on the last word. I stepped aside. She hesitated, then crossed the threshold. The door clicked shut behind her. The sound felt final. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. The distance between us shrank until there wasn't enough air for pretending anymore. She reached up and touched my collarbone, fingers light, tracing the edge of my shirt. I tried to forget, she whispered. It didn't work. I swallowed, pulse unsteady. You don't have to explain. Yes, I do, she said, looking up. Because this isn't fair to you. I've spent half my life pretending not to want things I'm allowed to want. And then you... She stopped herself, shaking her head. You make me remember. Her confession hit harder than any touch could. I reached up, brushed a strand of hair from her face. My thumb grazed her cheek, slow, careful. She closed her eyes and leaned into it like someone remembering warmth. Elise, I said, but my voice broke on her name. Don't say it unless you mean it, she whispered. I mean it. Her eyes opened then, wet, steady. Then tell me what you want. I stepped closer until our foreheads almost touched. You, I said simply, even if it ruins everything. She laughed softly, a single tear slipping down. You're too young to talk about ruin like it's a choice. Maybe, but you're the only thing I don't want to forget. Her breath caught. The space between us dissolved. Her hands came to rest against my chest, fingers curling slightly. I felt the tremor in them, the war between fear and need. She rose onto her toes, close enough that her breath brushed my mouth. If we do this, she murmured, we don't get to pretend afterward. I'm done pretending. For one suspended heartbeat, the world went still. Just her breath, my pulse, and everything waiting in that narrow space between us. Then she exhaled, eyes closing, forehead resting against mine. I thought I was too old to start wanting again, she whispered. But you made me remember how it feels to be alive. Neither of us moved closer. We didn't have to. The truth between us was already bare. When she finally pulled back, her hand lingered on my cheek. No matter what happens after this, she said softly, you saw me. That's enough. And as she turned away, I realized she wasn't leaving out of fear. She was leaving because she finally could. For the first time, we both understood what we'd been reaching for. Not just each other, but the part of ourselves we'd forgotten existed. Morning came slow. Gray light spilled through the blinds, thin and soft, touching everything it could reach. I found her sitting on the porch steps, barefoot, a mug of coffee cupped in both hands. She didn't turn when I slid the door open, but her shoulders relaxed, like she'd been waiting for the sound. You didn't sleep, I said quietly. She smiled without looking up. Did you? I shook my head, sat beside her. The wood was cold beneath us. She handed me the mug, and I took a sip, still warm, sweet, hers. For a while, neither of us spoke. The quiet felt different now. Not tense, not waiting, just real. Finally, she said, I thought I'd wake up and regret it. And I don't. That word hung there, simple and solid. I watched the steam rise from her cup, curl in the cold air, then fade. You don't have to explain anything, I said. She laughed softly. You always say that, like you're older than you are. Maybe just tired in the same way. She turned to look at me then, her hair messy, eyes still swollen from not sleeping. But she was beautiful in the kind of way that comes after truth. No pretense left. I kept telling myself this would ruin things, she said. My reputation, your future, the balance I worked so hard for. But all it did was make me feel something again. I reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. Her fingers laced with mine, slow, deliberate. The small motion carried more weight than anything else we'd said. She looked down at our hands, then up at me. You know people will talk. Let them, I said. They weren't there. That made her laugh again, quiet and full this time. She squeezed my hand once, as if to say don't let go. We sat like that, shoulders brushing, the world still waking up around us. When she leaned her head against my shoulder, it felt natural. No drama, no questions. Just a slow exhale that finally found peace. Her voice came soft. I don't know where this goes. I just know I don't want to pretend anymore. I turned slightly, pressed a kiss to her forehead. Her hand tightened around mine. Then we start there, I said. She smiled, tired, certain. Starting sounds good. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was the kind that holds something growing, something fragile but alive. The light caught her face just right then. A reminder of how fleeting mornings can be, how every choice leaves a mark. I thought about that first day, her saying you remind me how it feels to be wanted. And sitting there, her hand still in mine, I realized what she'd really meant. Wanting was never the danger. It was feeling seen that scared her. And now she was, did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?